Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Triathlete Podcast. I'm your host, Ram, and today I have a very special guest with us, Jaggi. I was introduced to Jaggi through my sister, and he has a really interesting story about how fitness has helped him turn around his life. Jaggi, would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, thanks, Ram. Pleasure to be on board. Thank you for reaching out. Hi, everybody. My name is Jaggi Nadig. I'm based here in Bangalore. I'm originally from Bangalore, did all my education here. I did my travels, went to Jakarta. I was in the US for 10 years. The last 3 years of the US, I went to B school, I went to Kellogg. So I finished my education in the US, moved to Singapore in 2008. Joined a family office, one of the founders of Infosys, did my work in investments, hospitality, engineering, healthcare, and then moved back to India in 2019. And of course, 2020 was the big uh, pandemic. So I started my yoga uh, business called Inner Journey, where we focus on building yoga curriculum for athletes. I specifically focus on athletes. I used to be an athlete myself, played a fair bit of badminton, was on the reserves for the state. I'm a cricket coach. I coach the Singapore under 17 cricket team, so I'm a level one ICC coach.
Amazing.
I'm also a badminton coach as well. So yeah,
Wow. Interesting. So, very interesting introduction there, Jaggi. And, fun fact, you're actually our first international guest. So, thanks again for being present here. Really look forward to, bringing your story to our listeners. So, you sprinkled in a bunch of the important facts that I'd like to cover, through your journey today. Firstly, you said that, you used to be an athlete yourself, and then you got into the professional world, became an engineer, did an MBA. A lot of us resonate with that story.
yeah.
So how did you continue having sports as a part of your life?
Yeah, the sports I think it's in the blood. No matter where I was, I always found a way to go and play. And so even in Jakarta, I used to play badminton quite a bit. In Chicago, we had a league called the Midwest Cricket League. It was one of the largest cricket leagues in the US. I was not only did I play, but I was also the general secretary of the league. I loved teaching, I guess, and so we started an academy there for kids. So I always made sure sports was integrated, no matter where I was. Right, always found time
Interesting.
for it. Yeah, always found time for it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of us lose touch with just fitness in general after the school competition kind of goes away from our lives.
yeah,
Looks like you managed to continue.
yeah,
What was that journey like? What happened? Yeah.
yeah. No, very interestingly, sports was also a very social aspect to it, right? So we made some great friendships, even who are very, very close to me even today. In fact, my application to Kellogg, there was a big element of sports in my application as well, because I talked about the fact that sports not just helps us with fitness, it brings people together across cultures, teamwork, things like that, which all is very resonated very well with my application for Kellogg. Um, but if I were to look back now, right, which is always hindsight's 2020, I played a lot more, but I didn't focus as much on fitness, right, or gym, yoga, things like that. So I had my first, and when you go to a place like Chicago, I joined the league, I joined the team, and our team did really well that first season. We reached the semifinals, and I had a really bad case of lower back pain. Right? My L3, L4, L4, L5, it was bulge discs. But the finals was the next weekend, so I had to take some meds, and then went back, played the finals. We won the finals. Of course, the celebrations, things like that, and that was in September, October in Chicago. And right after that, the weather sets in, so it's cold. There's a lot of temptations. There's ice cream, there's parties, there's things like that. So pretty much till March, I wasn't really as active, right? When the season restarted in April, I went for my preseason workout, right? We were playing, and I remember I padded up and just about to bat, and I I felt something really pop in my back, and with a warm liquid that kind of oozed in the back, and I touched and I was wondering what was going on. It was very, very strange. It was very strange, and I couldn't touch, I couldn't feel anything. So went on to play. I continued playing, went back home. I knew something was off. And then 2 days later is when I had a massive pain going through my lower back all the way down my leg, right? And when I found out more, I had developed sciatica, right? I had a ruptured disc, not just a bulge, but a ruptured disc as well. And so I went to three different orthopedics in the US at that time, and all of them they said, you're able to walk around, but in a week's time, you won't be able to. So come back then, and we'll cut you open, and then we'll fix you up, right? And the more I heard that, more I realized something was off, right? And it's something I had to do by myself. So got into research mode, found out people with similar journeys that use yoga as a tool. And that really was my first introduction into yoga, right? And it was completely self-taught. Picked up a whole bunch of books, some books on yoga, some philosophy, the philosophy of pain, and it took me about a year or so, but I was able to come back, completely strong, completely fit. But again, it was all done through experimentation, not really a scientific approach to it. Right? But that gave me enough legway for the next 10 odd years, right? And I had no incidences. Went back to playing, things like that.
Interesting.
But yeah, but I think what happened subsequently was, work takes over, and my work was a lot of travel, right? I covered Southeast Asia, but I continued playing. I continued playing badminton, and badminton is such a beautiful game, but it's also a very brutal game for your joints, knees, and lower back. So I ended up playing a match against one of my friends. I typically don't play singles, but the fourth partner wasn't there, so we ended up playing singles. And we finished the game. By the evening, I knew something was up because my knee was swollen quite a bit. And the next day, we found out it was a tear in my meniscus in my left knee, right? So I got operated. So they cut that part of the meniscus out. But I had a board meeting a week later in Australia. So against the advice of people,
Ouch.
yeah, I had to, yeah, I went back. I went to Australia, walked around, and then I was in Thailand. I was covering Southeast Asia. So my work continued on. I kind of somehow figured a way, not really listening to myself. Right? Uh, and yeah, this was so the surgery was in 2015. And then by 2016, March, April, my sciatica had come back. But
Oh,
like uh, continued to going back to it, and so we've again then tried Ayurveda. We tried a bunch of other, you know, non-traditional forms of healing, but nothing seemed to work. Nothing seemed to work, and so I finally got my surgery done in 2016, which was essentially to cut me open, and then I had lost three discs, a big part of the discs, that is. So they had dehydrated. I mean, some of them had ruptured. So the L3, L4, L4, L5, and L5, S1, the three discs had dehydrated. So they cut me open and cleaned up, and put me back in place. So that was 2016. And
interesting.
then came my new journey, right? The
Wow.
new piece of the yoga, which is I would say version 2, version 3. You lose
Wow.
track of the versions.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, look, fascinating story to just see how much your body has been through.
Yeah,
Um, when fitness has been a part almost of your identity growing up as a child, right? Playing sports and through adulthood as well. How does the mind deal with such injuries?
yeah, which is
What does that do for you? Yeah.
yeah. No, that's the toughest part, right? What happens, it goes into a little bit of a cyclical loop in the mind, because you start developing fear. Second, there is a sense of being left out, because my identity, like you said, was through sports. right? I loved the camaraderie, I loved the teamwork, I loved being around people, and suddenly now you're no longer a part of it, right? To sit, to move is painful. And every bit of your day-to-day activities is painful, right? And then you have people around you, some medical community, some of them talking to you to say that you will never be able to play again, you'll never be able to lift again. When the surgery happened for my lower back, I was told you can never lift your child again. My son was at that time 7 years old, right? So things like that really, really get you. And for me, luckily, I was surrounded by people who are, kind of motivated me. I come from a background where a lot of my friends are athletes, right? So, and athletes never like to hear the word no, right? And I was also got lucky at that point of time where I met my yoga teacher, and she was in Singapore. She follows the Iyengar style of yoga, and she was almost like God sent to me. Because
Interesting.
till that time, I thought I knew yoga, but then after I met her is when I knew the science behind it, the structure, the methodology. But
Interesting.
athletes go through emotionally, mentally, physically, a real spiral down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
So it's important to
Yeah.
surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
I will tell this one thing, Ram. I think body has an unbelievable ability to heal. Right?
Hmm.
We can reverse things, right? Which I have seen, I witnessed, and I'll talk about it, right? But it has an unbelievable ability to heal itself, to reverse
Hmm.
symptoms, right? So I think that as long as we set along that path,
Yeah.
right? And so as I mean, I would tell all your listeners, never get anybody to say that this is the end of the rope, right? Because it really is not. There is definitely light beyond.
Very nicely said. So, if I just take a moment and talk about how did you choose yoga to be your path forward?
Yeah,
Sitting in the states, yoga is not the first thing all of us think of,
yeah,
but it looks like
yeah.
that's where you landed. So, how did you discover that to be your path?
Yeah, it was, when you're cornered, when you're put into a place where, the medical community doesn't give you any other option other than going under the knife, right? You start exploring, right? You start talking to various
Hmm.
people. I even spoke to somebody on the TCM, the traditional Chinese medicine. There was, um, of course, Ayurveda, there was yoga, and to be honest, I tried all of them, not a lot of them, right? But for me, the body kind of, the first thing that yoga tells you is start listening, right? The body is communicating to you, start listening, right? And when I started that process, is literally within week 2 or week 3, it was almost like I knew that I was on the right path. It just, something just said I was on the right path. So then once I realized that, I just dived full time into it.
Wow,
Yeah,
fascinating. Got it. Okay, so interesting. So yeah, let's maybe pick it up where you picked up
yeah,
your second injury, which was the meniscus. What happened after that?
yeah. The meniscus soon followed by the sciatica resurfacing again, the surgery in 2016. And in 2017, Jan was when I found my yoga teacher. She was based in Singapore. And when I went to her, for me to walk 100 meters was very, very hard, right? I was still, there was soreness, things were very, very tight. I couldn't touch my knees. Um, I couldn't bend and touch my knees. So I had severe stiffness going on. And of course, lack of confidence, call it anxiety, depression, all of that rolled in, right? And with two young kids. Um, so when I started with her, the first thing, she kind of said was, let's just completely take a back step. Let's look at your basics, right? I went back to the basics of sitting. We went back to the basics of standing,
Wow.
the basics of breathing, right? Because nobody teaches you these things, right? As children, We have milestones saying that, hey, the child sat, the child walked, obviously the child is breathing as soon as the child is born. But nobody tells you whether you're breathing right or wrong, right? 80% of the athletes actually breathe wrong, right? I mean, I see that even now. I see that in a lot of the athletes that I teach, right? So we went back to that first. Second, we went back to my structure itself, right? I had a flat foot. I had something called a bunion, which is the hallux valgus, where the big toe comes and sits on top of the toe next to it, and with this joint in my foot being broken, right? So I had that, and therefore my feet are not taking the load well, right? So it's transferring my the load up first to the ankle joints, and then to the calf, then to the knees, hamstrings, the glutes, and then finally the lower back. Right. So, the fact that it's gone up all the way to the lower back is the amount of stress that I've added in the system without these various parts doing their job. Right. So she made me aware of that chain. Right. Second, started working on correcting my flat foot, which I thought, and the medical community had told me never. Right. I remember still as a child, when they would do a test, right? I would put my feet in the water and then get me to walk, and I see that imprint. It was 100% imprint, right? There was no arch, so therefore, and I remember the doctor. This is as a child. I remember the doctor saying, "Ye bacha kabhi nahi bhagega," that kind of right. So, and then here's this teacher, and she's telling me, "Look, I can reverse this," and I'm like, I want to believe her, right? I'm gone obviously with a completely open mind. And you will not believe, in the first 2 to 3 weeks of she first started to really get me opened up, right? I mean, again, I had like this crazy aha moment, saying, yes, this is it. Yeah, this was right. And I was a very, very dedicated student as well. I whatever she taught me, I did 3 4 times a day. And because I was at that point as well, right? I was at a point where I can't play, I can't carry my child, I'm not as effective at work, things like that. So you're getting hit in all your circles. And so 3 weeks was a brilliant little turnaround. By about in the eighth or 10th week is when I started noticing something changing in my feet, right? It was the beginning of the arch. So the arch was resurfacing, right? So
My
that's why,
gosh.
it was incredible. And then slowly I started getting control on this big toe on my foot, which is always sitting like this. I was starting to bring it out because the doctors had talked about another surgery where they would put a plate right here, and kind of keep it straight. And I've now told myself no more surgeries, no more getting chopped up again. So now with yoga, I have full control over it. Full control. It's back out.
Wow.
Yeah, the arch is
Interesting.
back.
So, how do you deal with a doctor telling you well into your, I guess, 30s maybe, that
Yeah,
you aren't sitting properly? Like, how do
yeah,
you open your mind to that kind of feedback?
yeah. No, for me, the person who gave me that feedback was my yoga teacher, right? And
Oh, yeah, sorry, I mean
interesting,
yoga
yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I when she first told me, you don't even walk properly, you don't stand properly, you don't sit properly, and I'm like, you know, I I didn't want to believe her. I didn't want to be treated like a kid again. That was the first thought that came, right? But she kind of walked me through the actual process, right? She taught me about how sitting, today WHO actually tells you sitting is the new smoking, right? That's because, I mean, in terms of the impact it creates on the body, right? That's because we don't invoke the right muscles. You're sitting a lot these days, thanks to the laptop and our lifestyles today, right? But we are not invoking the right muscles. Because if you go back in time, look at all the great rishis, they who sat and meditated, they would sit for months, sometimes years, right? And had no issues because they invoked the right muscles. So she approached it from a scientific point of view, right? Which as a student of science, that kind of resonated really well. So then we talked about the sitting again, went into the science of standing, the science of breathing, which was which really hit home. So then on, I'm now on the path of yoga sports science, right? So which is one, there is the philosophy of yoga, right? But and today athletes would like to know why and what's happening inside. How is this relevant to me? How is it relevant to the sport? Why is breathing through the nose good and not through the mouth, right? So those kinds of answers, we have not been able to give them a scientific answer to it, right? So which I think is helps kind of explain why the importance of yoga is, and therefore better adoption.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned that you were able to turn your life around and start engaging in physical activity again. How
Yeah.
long did it take you to
Yeah.
come to a point where you felt, yes, my body's back now?
Yeah. So when I started the yoga journey in 2017, I didn't go back to sports the entire year.
Hmm.
And by 2018, the beginning part of 2018, I mean, I would continue to walk. My walking had dramatically changed. I had started running or jogging, right? That is in 2017. But the sport itself, right, as in cricket or tennis, I didn't start till 2018. And I can tell you now that it's been about 6 years or so, right? This is probably I'm going to be 50 next year, right? And this is the best I've ever felt in my life, right? In terms of physically, right? And in terms of I mean, not just strength, flexibility, mental strength. And I mentioned that I'm an investor into a school called the Sports School, right? And where these athletes, they're all groomed to be champions, right? And I compete with them at badminton even today, right? I don't let them beat me. So the fact that I'm able to move and compete, I think is something I'm super happy about. Yeah.
That's really, really incredible. So yeah, I wanted to get into this phase of your life now, which is your sports school and inner journey. Can you
Yeah.
just tell us about what are they and what motivated you to start them?
Yeah, so the sports school, the motivation was that there's quite a few of us who had to make a choice, when we are growing up. It was either between education and sports. And back in those days, sports didn't have much of a career unless you're like a Dravid or a Sachin, right, in cricket. So the idea here was to say, how can we keep both, right? How can we keep both passions going while keeping sports as the core? Also surround yourself with education, that is providing education that is fit for an athlete. At the same time, we take care of all needs of the athlete. Of course, the skill training, the strength conditioning, mental conditioning, physiotherapy, yoga, dietitian, nursing, all of that is we wanted to be able to bring it into one facility. Right today, when you look at most of the athletes, they go training to one location. They go to, I mean, they don't even go to a psychiatrist at all, or a sports counselor, right? They don't go to a dietitian, things like that, right? They just go to a gym and then they get skills training, but a lot of the other pieces are missing. So we've integrated all of that into one campus here in Bangalore, and we've made yoga mandatory there for all the kids, right?
Interesting.
And to me, so the school, I started getting involved in the school in 2019, right? And that was year one for us. And of course, pandemic came right through, right? So 2020. So, but I had seen a significant change in myself, right? And how yoga had really, really helped me. And I took the opportunity during the downtime to go a little bit more deeper into both studying yoga and practicing yoga. Right? I would do 4, 5, sometimes 6, 7 hours of yoga every day, and started putting together a curriculum for athletes. Right. So and then I created a company called Inner Journey, right, where we essentially help bridge that gap between yoga and sports. Right.
Interesting. So what do you sorry to interject, but
Yeah.
what do you think it is about yoga that differentiates it from, let's say, getting a personal trainer in the gym?
Yeah. No, I would say both are important, right? I would definitely think,
Hmm.
it's not one over the other, but I think what yoga does is brings it all together, right? As an athlete, one of the
Hmm.
I think the biggest distinguishing factor, between a Djokovic and maybe the one next to him is the mental strength, right? Is the clarity of decision making, right? Is the is the lack of any other thought in the mind, right? The emptiness, right? That's very, very, very important. So I think what yoga does is it helps you bring your body, breath, and mind in together, right? And just helps you with better decision making, right? So I think that is something that I have seen significantly. I have, and also through this practice, I would do a couple of routines, go back to playing, and I would, I'm a batsman as well, and when I did a specific routine and I would bat, I suddenly noticed that I was a lot more still. My decision making was much better. I was not hurried onto any stroke, and I was wondering what was going on internally, right? That's now it's a very different version of me when I'm batting. And then we started looking at the sports science behind it, and then realized that there are certain smaller muscles. There's a smaller band called the spiral band, which is used for keeping balance. That last bit, that last half a bit of advantage that you need, right? So we were able to invoke those things called the spiral band through specific asanas, right? And then we said, okay, now let's try it with our athletes. And some of our athletes, have after having tried that, come back and now they're saying, "Oh my God, I haven't batted with this kind of clarity before." Right? So I think, if you ask me, it is the integration of breath, it's the integration of body, mind, everything coming together. I think that's what yoga can help.
Interesting. Interesting. Wow. So you had a long and, I would say volatile journey with the body and with sports. I mean,
Yeah,
sports is your first love, it looks like.
yeah.
What's your perspective on what we can do or for the next generation that they can do? What can they learn from your experience?
Yeah, I definitely don't do the mistakes that I did, which is, I think we should approach not just sport, but I think life in a little bit more of a holistic way. All right. Today, I'm excited for the next generation, right? There's incredible amount of information available. There's all these new technologies that are coming in that are integrating with our lives. But at the same time, I see a lot of uncertainty because the rapid change in development is scary. It's scary to somebody like me because you don't know. I mean, when I'm growing up, I had options of either being a doctor, or a computer science engineer, electrical engineer, things like that. It's very, very defined. But today it's very, very vast, right? So I think the options are a lot more, and we don't know what's going to stick, what will get phased away thanks to AI, things like that. So I would tell kids to have a little bit of a regimented program. So don't think of fitness as literally like an hour and a half, right? Think of it as pockets of 5, 10, 15 minutes blocks, right? That you do through the day, right? And even all my athletes, all my students who come now, I tell them, look, I'm sitting here right now. Let's say I'm doing this podcast with you. I finish the podcast and I'll do a 5 minute stretching routine, just a 5 minute, right? So it is about uh, us finding small pockets and creating habits, right? Rather than trying to say, oh my God, I got to allocate another hour and a half, right? And that becomes a barrier. So you should try and remove barriers as much as you can, right? Now that I'm sitting here,
Interesting.
I will use my chair to do my stretches. I could be wearing a suit, I could be wearing shorts, doesn't matter, I'll still integrate it, right? So the point is you don't need a gym, you don't need a yoga mat, you don't need dumbbells. You can do things with your body weight, you can do things with what's surrounding you, 5, 10 minutes
Interesting.
through the day, right? So I think
It almost sounds like you're saying fitness is not an activity; it's a lifestyle.
it is, absolutely is, right? And then second comes what do you eat, right? What you eat, I think is extremely important. And third, the more that I'm reading about the mind, what you speak is also very important, right? Because you always remain positive, right? If you kind of be harsh on yourself, saying that I'm not good enough, things like that, right? I mean, those things again go through a vicious cycle within the system. And so I would say always talk positive, speak, and obviously eat well, right? Be careful about what you eat. Of course, there's always cheat days, things like that. I understand there's a lot of temptations around us, but it's important for us to find that balance and then come right back to it.
Wonderful. Inspiring thoughts, Jaggi. Look, your story is super inspiring for me personally. I think, as they say in Rocky, right? It doesn't matter how many times you've been beat down, as long as you can get up.
Yes.
And that's, I think, you embodied that story. So thanks so much for sharing such a deeply personal story. And I really do hope that other folks can listen to you and be inspired. And wish you all the best. I think that's a great note to end the podcast on. Thanks for attending and sharing your time.
Thanks, Ram. Enjoyed speaking with you, and then look forward to staying in touch.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.